What if I told you that the strongest version of you doesn't look like hardened muscles, nor accumulated achievements, but the stillness of a root growing in the dark? Imagine if your entire quest for power had been just a detour, and that true strength was hidden where no one looks, in the silence that sustains your own heart. There is an ancient secret that few have dared to translate, because it isn't about war techniques or magic productivity formulas. It's something Genghis Khan intuited when uniting tribes, something Musashi embodied when facing the emptiness of a duel, and something Lao Tzu described without swords, without armies, without glory. The promise I hold for you is simple and yet definitive. There's a forgotten key that transforms fragility into presence, anxiety into clarity, fatigue into vital energy. I'm not talking about positive thinking, nor superficial meditations, nor ready-made phrases that get lost in life's first storm. It's not about repeating soulless mantras or donning emotional armor to pretend nothing affects you. The knowledge you are about to touch comes from hidden sources, preserved in echoes of ancient wisdom, the parables of Lao Tzu, the discipline of Xunzi. The awakened mind that Sam Harris reminds us is just a river to be navigated, and the relentless clarity of Genghis Khan who, without ever clinging to anger, knew how to see clearly what is essential. This knowledge has been diluted, fragmented, and misinterpreted over the centuries. Modern haste has transformed it into cheap slogans and market-driven spirituality. But today here, the first piece is revealed again. Not the entire journey, just the initial key, enough to open a crack in the internal wall you've built against yourself. And at this very moment, if you choose to remain, you will receive the first revelation, not about how to become invincible, but about how to cease the secret war that consumes your energy day after day. This is the root of strength that no external enemy can steal. If you feel you are ready for this transformation, write in the comments, "Strength begins within." Imagine discovering that what you call strength was never what truly sustained your life, that there exists another dimension, invisible to the naked eye and forgotten in the modern rush, capable of transforming not only the way you face the world, but the way you relate to yourself. The secret is ancient, hidden in ancient metaphors and forgotten practices. It is a strength that never runs out, because it doesn't depend on the exhaustion of pushing the body beyond its limits or the mind beyond sanity. It is a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't display trophies, doesn't need witnesses. It manifests itself in silence, like the roots that support the tree, even when the trunk seems fragile in the wind. This extraordinary transformation isn't temporary. It's not a motivation that evaporates at the end of the week. It's a permanent, deep-rooted change that awakens within you an unrelenting clarity. The same clarity that guided Genghis Khan in his vision, Musashi in his duels, and Lao Tzu in his enigmatic words. Today, in this video, you'll gain access to this path, not as a promise of perfection, but as an invitation to experience the strength that never leaves, because it originates in the place no one can destroy, within you. I'm not talking about rigid self-discipline that suffocates, nor about productivity formulas that promise so much but empty your soul. It's not about thinking positively until you're wrong, nor about repeating cliches hoping life will change on its own. True strength isn't born from pretending emotions don't exist, nor from forcing yourself to be unshakable when inside you're on the verge of collapse. It's not about building a facade of invincibility, because every mask, sooner or later, shatters. The path you'll discover here has nothing to do with the common solutions you've tried and failed. It's not temporary motivation. It's not repression of feelings. It's not spiritual escape. It's something much deeper, and, precisely for that reason, much simpler. What you're about to hear wasn't born in modern self-help manuals, but echoes traditions that have survived for millennia. Lao Tzu described in verses that sound like riddles. Strength doesn't impose itself, it simply remains. Genghis Khan, with strategic silence, showed that clarity is worth more than anger. Musashi, facing the emptiness of each duel, revealed that presence surpasses any technique. Xunzi reminded us that man isn't born ready, he forges himself. And Sam Harris, using the language of science, confirms, your mind is a river, not a prison. These are distinct voices, but they all point to the same mystery. There's an invisible source of power that does not depend on external conquest, a force that does not shine like thunder, but sustains like a root. This is the knowledge hidden in parables, metaphors, and teachings that many have read, but few have truly lived. This knowledge isn't found in the self-help books that pile up on shelves, nor in the crash courses that promise transformation in 7 days. Over the centuries, it has been distorted, fragmented, and even hidden. What remains for most are empty echoes, soulless techniques, rootless words, practices that have become just another burden amid the chaos of modern life. Few have had access to its intact essence. Few have been able to see beyond appearances, to reclaim the invisible thread that connects ancient wisdom to today's practical life. And it is precisely this exclusivity that makes this moment rare. You are faced with something that is not found everywhere, but that can, here and now, be revealed clearly and vividly. In this very video, you will receive the first key, not the entire journey, not all the secrets, just the opening necessary for the path to reveal itself. A simple revelation, but one capable of immediately changing the way you see your own strength. Today, you will understand how to end the silent war that consumes your energy, how to stop fighting yourself, and discover that true strength is not something you need to conquer, but something that already pulses silently within you. If you feel like the time has come to stop wearing yourself out pretending to be strong, and are ready to experience the root of a strength that never fades, declare it now. Write in the comments, "Strength begins within." This simple gesture is more than words. It's a silent commitment to yourself. It's like planting the first seed of a root that, in the darkness, begins to sustain your entire life. You've tried to find strength in many ways. You've forced discipline, repeated mantras, tried meditating in silence while your mind kept screaming. You believed positive thinking would be enough, but found the weight would quickly return. You subscribed to methods that promised immediate clarity, but only brought more pressure and frustration. The problem isn't you. The problem is that all these solutions are superficial. They work like quick fixes. They provide temporary relief, but they don't heal the root cause. What happens is simple. You create a routine, stick to it for a few days, and then the fatigue returns. The fatigue of maintaining a mask is greater than the strength to be who you truly are. Remember the first week you tried to radically change your life? Maybe it was with a new habit, a diet, a course, or even a promise to wake up earlier every day. At first, it seemed possible, but after a few days, your body felt heavy, your mind complained, your motivation evaporated, and you were left with the same old feeling. Why doesn't anything last? They promise liberation, but only deliver more pressure. They talk about control, but only generate more anxiety. They offer formulas for discipline, but don't teach how to breathe peacefully. What's missing isn't effort. It's not willpower. It's not dedication. What's missing is the key, learning to stop fighting against yourself. This missing piece wasn't born in modern manuals. It has spanned centuries in voices that have not faded. Lao Tzu, with his enigmatic poetry, showed that strength comes not from resisting the wind, but from learning to bend like bamboo that survives the storm. Genghis Khan, seen as a ruthless conqueror, won not only by the sword, but by the clarity of choosing the battles that mattered, leaving the rest behind. Musashi discovered that true victory lies not in defeating enemies, but in being whole in the face of emptiness. Xunzi, often misunderstood, didn't speak of stifling human nature, but of forging character through rituals that liberate rather than imprison. And in the language of science, Sam Harris reminds us, your mind is not you. It is a moving river, one that can be navigated with attention rather than forcibly controlled. This secret source is an invisible thread connecting philosophy, spirituality, and neuroscience. A thread that has been forgotten because it promises neither immediate glory nor instant results. But when tapped, life changes from the inside out, with a power that requires no artificial effort. Close your eyes for a second, just to hear my inner voice, and imagine the promise becoming reality. Not a promise of spectacular feats, but of a transformation that takes hold and doesn't fade. What I offer you now is not a set of slogans. It's a map of simple, triable steps that turn the power inward. The key I offer isn't magic, nor a motivational trick. It's an arrangement of attitudes, micro-rituals, and attention that, together, interrupt the war you wage against yourself and allow true strength, the one that springs from a root, to grow silently and permanently. The first thing you need to know is this. The transformation promised here is inevitable as you accept small, repeated actions. I don't promise instant healing. I promise a path that, if followed honestly, changes the way your mind reacts, your body rests, and your spirit chooses. I will now describe the steps of this path, each with practical instructions, sensations to seek, and small daily challenges, so that you can see for yourself, in a few hours and days, whether the root has begun to form. Start with your body. The foundation of presence is your breath, an invisible thread between your life and calm. Sit with your spine straight, but without tension. Place your hand on your lower abdomen. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and pause for a count of 4. 4 counts for each movement. Do this for 3 cycles. Then, for 2 minutes, breathe more slowly. In for 4 counts, out for 6 counts. Feel your diaphragm working, the ground beneath you, the true weight of your body. Don't try to produce effects. Observe. This is the biological antenna that reconnects you to the present. And when it stabilizes, the mind releases its fight mode and makes room for clarity. Micro-ritual. Do this breathing 3 times a day, when you wake up, before lunch, and before bed, and mark, on a line in your notebook, how each session went. Keywords: heavy, light, cloudy, clear. Now the mind. Clarity is a silent form of power. Take a sheet of paper and write on a line. Today my priority is... Write just one thing. If you're tempted to list 10 goals, tear that temptation away. The real exercise is to reduce. After writing, set a slide time. 25 minutes exclusively for the chosen task. No notifications, no multitasking. At the end of the time, write 2 sentences about what changed, however small. Neuroscience reminds us that the brain rewards focus with a sense of completion. The habit of choosing a battle and pouring your soul into it is the same principle that made Genghis Khan choose where to fight and where to yield. 3-day experiment. Repeat this exercise. Notice if something inside you begins to conserve energy, because energy is not strength when dispersed, it is strength when concentrated. The spirit, which here isn't dogma, but a profound sense, is cultivated by practices that invite silence to flourish. Walk for 20 minutes, without headphones, without a podcast, breathing slowly. It's not formal meditation. It's a communion with the simple, the step that touches the ground, the air that enters, the decision not to add noise. If you can, perform a small ritual at the end. Write a single sentence that summarizes what you brought from the path. I learned to compromise. I chose less. I was human today. This record creates a bridge between experience and memory and reinforces the identity you want to build. It doesn't promise miracles. It promises alignment, making choices that refine your field of action. Emotions are the most treacherous battlefield and also the most fertile soil. The practice is simple and powerful. Name them before reacting. When anger, sadness, or fear arise, stop, take 2 deep breaths, and say quietly, "This is anger, this is fear." Naming doesn't eliminate the feeling, but it slows down its automaticity. Then, allow the feeling to exist for 2 minutes, observing where it manifests in your body. If it's in your chest, breathe into your chest. If it's in your throat, release the tension in your jaw. This act of acceptance, some call it labeling to tame, rewires the emotional circuits that reinforce constant defense. Daily practice. At least once a day, let an emotion pass without immediately fixing it, and write down what has changed. Now that the body, mind, spirit, and emotions have simple practices, let's move on to slightly more advanced techniques. Always safe, always grounded. I call these portals, brief sequences that combine breath, focus, and movement to anchor a deeper state. Example of a portal: 3-minute sit, breathe 4-4 for 3 cycles. Close your eyes and visualize a single tree, observe the roots. Quietly repeat, I root. I choose. Stand up slowly and take 3 slow steps. Feel the contact of your feet with the ground. This small portal creates a signal that your mind learns to read. When you perform this sequence, your body understands that it is time for deep presence. Use it before important decisions, before difficult conversations, before beginning a task that is worthy of your soul. Small external signals solidify internal changes. Create a microenvironment. Choose a corner, an object, a rock, a notebook, a mug, that, when touched, reminds you to pause. Every time your hands encounter this object, perform a 4-4-4 breath and ask, does this strengthen me? If the answer is no, let go. This is the discipline Xunzi proposed. Rituals that liberate, not to create rigid rules, but to form channels where action flows without wear and tear. Now, a practical and direct invitation. The 3-day experiment. Day 1. Choose one thing you do too much. Keeping 5 projects open, answering emails late at night, consuming excessive news, and stop for 72 hours. Instead, practice morning breathing and write down your single priority. Day 2. Keep breathing, add a 20-minute walk, and perform a 25-minute tempo blade. Day 3. Use the portal before a difficult conversation. Name an emotion that arises, and write a line about how you felt. By the end of the 3rd day, look for subtle changes. More space between thought and reaction, less need to prove something to someone, a slight decrease in the sense of urgency that used to pull you. You may notice physical sensations that aren't spectacular but unmistakable. A gentle tingling in your fingertips, a weight in your chest that softens, an inner silence that isn't emptiness, but presence. Don't chase these sensations. Allow them to emerge as proof that something internal is shifting. Record them in simple language. Today I felt more space in my chest. Today I didn't react immediately. These subjective validations are as real as any external metric and sustain the practice. Integration is the art of bringing together loose pieces into a coherent whole. Imagine a fabric, each thread, breathing, focusing, walking, naming, portal, is fragile in isolation, but together they form a blanket that protects you from wear and tear. The idea here isn't to add more habits to your list, but to replace sabotaging movements with practices that conserve energy. I propose a 7-day plan. Days 1 to 3, focus on breathing and stopping excessive behavior. Days 4 to 5, introduce blade time and walking. Day 6, use of the portal before a key action. Day 7, silent review. Write down what came in, what went out, and a small promise for the following week. Repetition is the mother of transformation, not through coercion, but through gentle habit. We've reached the final design, the synthesis that transforms method into a way of life. It's not about accumulating techniques, but about recognizing a pattern. Choose less, feel more, act with clarity. The roots you cultivate today will fuel future decisions. Genghis Khan knew how to choose battles. Musashi knew that presence trumps technique. Lao Tzu taught us not to fight the wind. Combine these lessons and you have a system. Breathe, choose, feel, anchor, repeat. Simple, yet profound. And then comes the philosophical twist. A small paradox that, once accepted, dissolves much of the weight you carry. The strength you seek isn't added, it's discovered. It's not about piling up instruments of power. It's about removing what blocks your presence from appearing. The final revelation is this. What you call weakness is often a sign that there's a space ready to be filled with presence. The greatest courage isn't building walls, but letting go of something to allow the root to take its place. Before closing, the sage proposes a micro-challenge for today. Choose a moment when you would normally defend yourself, a criticism, a comment that shakes you, an automatic habit, and respond differently. Stop, take 4 breaths, name the feeling, and say a short phrase. Today, I choose to root. That's it. Small acts create new landscapes. If, along this path, you feel that the transformation has begun and want to mark this step, write in the comments, strength begins within. Publicly declare this commitment. The act of declaring it before the community is a powerful support for the practice. If this video helped you, subscribe, and activate the bell, not as an empty plea, but as an invitation to return to a port that understands your struggle without requiring armor. Before closing, a word of caution. Some internal practices can touch deep wounds. If, when performing something here, you feel that what emerges is more than discomfort, if it brings on overload, traumatic memories, or interrupted sleep, seek qualified professional support. The root path is courageous, but it should not replace clinical care when it is necessary. Finally, we return to the beginning and the promise. I'm not asking you to become invincible. I'm asking you to stop fighting with yourself. Do the practices for a week, slowly, honestly. Notice the small changes and be patient with the setbacks. They're part of the journey. The strength that interests you doesn't need witnesses. It only needs constancy. Come back whenever you want. This place is a harbor. Here, you can strip off your armor and feel what's left. There, in the silence, the root grows.